here. Working not as a photographer. My father-in-law was a geologist before he became a photographer. He's a geologist. They were both in the Geological Survey of India. Maybe 2 minutes you can say something about him, which even we don't know. IAS.
After geology.
After geology.
No, after geology I wanted to do petroleum geology. And I applied to all the oil companies. And they said, look, it's soon after the war, uncertain conditions. So sorry we are not able to entertain you, even as an apprentice geologist. So that's how I got into it.
You got to that IAS. But you were classmates in college. Is that right?
We were classmates.
Mr.
Yes,
Arnold.
when we went to the camp, we met you and your father. And your father.
My
We met your
memory, of
father.
course, is pretty bad. I'm 91. But I recall some of my classmates. But Gauri, I recall, was a soft-spoken. I mean, you never felt to see that he was one of those aggressive persons. Very helpful, smiling, and had a lot of information. In fact, I remember Gauri used to share a lot of information about general knowledge with us. Yes, I do recall he had a fund of knowledge. And I was, of course, into sports activities, UTC and whatnot. Very nice.
Thank you for coming.
But Gauri is remembered for his
Mr. Bose of
skills as a photographer.
Right.
And of the classmates, I think Venkatraman and I are still around.
Which Venkatraman? One
Yes.
of the Reserve Bank?
No,
Not the IAS officer.
no, he was the ONGC. He was a senior geologist. And because M.V. Arunachala, who was chairman of the Nilgama group, he was also a college fellow. Yeah. So when Mrs. Gauri Shankar, after a great deal of difficulty, got my phone number, you see.
Very nice of you to respond.
Sorry, I have to cut.
Thank you very much.
Perfectionist of the life and work of Mr. C. Gauri Shankar at the Heritage Center. We proceed with the other events scheduled in today's program. I now request Professor Nagarajan, faculty in charge of Heritage Center, to address the audience.
Good evening. Want to welcome everyone to this very special Heritage Center Day. This is our Diamond Jubilee year, our 60th anniversary of founding of IIT Madras, and delighted to see such a good turnout, both for the exhibition as well as for this session. In fact, Kumaran was telling me that we pretty much ran out of refreshments. That's always a good sign. So, again, I want to thank all of you for taking time out on a Friday afternoon to come and join us. Of course, IIT Madras, I think all of us have some bond with this campus, with this institution. So I don't have to say much about the institute and its wonderful history and heritage and all that. The only thing I would say is that there is a saying that those who do not remember history are condemned to repeat it. I don't think we would mind repeating the history of IIT Madras. It's a glorious history. But that doesn't mean that we're going to forget the heritage. I do think that we can both remember the heritage as well as sustain the heritage. Of course, heritage is a lot more than history, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that this evening. It's culture, it's philosophy, it's everything that surrounds us. It's even the lingo. The campus lingo is part of our heritage. So many of us very fondly remember the various nicknames and other phrases that were used that nobody else could understand but us. In fact, every hostel had its own lingo and every wing had its own lingo. So it's all part of our culture, it's all part of our heritage, and we must certainly celebrate it every way we can. So I think we already had a fabulous program at Heritage Center, and I look forward to the two talks this evening and a special video that's going to be screened. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Heritage Center Day in our Diamond Jubilee here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have with us Mrs. Mahalakshmi Gauri-Shankar. She supported Mr. Gauri-Shankar with his photography, often developing his pictures in their house. I now request Ms. Mamta Raj to present Mrs. Mahalakshmi Gauri-Shankar with a token of appreciation. We'll move on to the next event. Now I request Professor Natarajan to introduce Professor Roland.
Just a very quick introduction to Roland. He has been, I think, a breath of fresh air ever since he came and joined our Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. I think he has really inspired us over the last few years to start learning to appreciate our heritage, our history, and he is, I would say, the prime moving force behind our intention to set up an archive, and he is the faculty in charge of our archive, and I'm very happy that he's here. Of course, his wife is a historian also, and I think between the two of them, they really bring a very different and very fresh perspective to technology at IIT Madras. And he, of course, brings a very German perspective to this also. In fact, I think he was shocked that we didn't have an archive yet, because in Germany, I think within 10 years usually institutions start, maybe even earlier, setting up an archive, and we have gone 60 years without one. And so he certainly has this burning passion to close that gap as quickly as possible, and I'm sure that it will happen, and it will be something else that we can point to with pride. I believe we'll be the first IIT to set one up if we plan and execute everything on time, and look forward to leading all the other institutions in India in this aspect as well, like we do in everything else. So I now invite Roland to give his presentation.
Thank you very much for letting me talk again, because this is not, it's about a month. It's very much 30th January, it's a month ago that I was standing in the other hall and giving a presentation, and this is even a series of presentations. I will be giving a presentation at the Faculty Association as well about the importance, why history matters, the importance of history of science and technology as an institution like IIT Madras, which will be in the end of March. So last time I presented the project of setting up a historical archive, I made an argument about why we need an archive, because no archive, no history. As simple as that. You refer to my wife, that was what my wife was told when she tried to write, and she finally did write history of science, history of nuclear physics in India, because fortunately TIFR had set up their archives. It's true, none of the IITs have set up their archives, but TIFR and very recently NCBS has set up a great new archive, so we are not alone. I'm also going to an archive workshop to the French Institute of Pondicherry next weekend, so being part of a larger network, also an international network of doing that. So I'm not going to be talking about this right now. Kumaran, I don't know, where's Kumaran right now? There he is, yeah. She asked me, oh, you also have to tell us about, not only about our archive, but you have to tell us what all wonderful things you found in the German archives. So yes, I have to say me pushing you to set up an archive is also very much in my interest, because as a historian of science and technology, I got very interested in this Indo-German project of IIT Madras. I have to say, not only I will come back to that as well for institutional history, but because I think it's a great place, IIT Madras is a great place to learn about science and technology during the Cold War. In my course on global history and how it manifested, how IIT Madras is part of a larger history of science and technology, and we have to understand that as well. So I have what you then, as a humanities person, you're always writing on a book, so you say that's my book project, right? I just had a sabbatical. I went half a year to Germany, to the German archives, which I will be talking about here, and was also very generously supported from the alumni funds, so I got some grant from the alumni funds as well to do this. About the archive, I just wanted to say we're just in the process of announcing a project leader for the archive project to take this ahead, and I hope that we can inaugurate the plans to inaugurate this on the 31st of July, which is like the 60th anniversary of the inauguration of IIT Madras. So the structure of this talk here is very briefly some of the historical background. It's a little bit dangerous to tell people here because there's so many people here who can contradict me, who say, I've been there, it has been very different from what you're telling. What I'm telling here is probably also from my perspective that I gained very much from looking at the German archives, I have to say. And I hope I have something new even for the people who have been there, who have been part of this. I can present something new here. But I think it's also necessary for many of you who don't know the history very well. I want to talk about the archives. Which are the archives? Where can you find things? What can you find in these archives? And also, what kind of historical perspectives can be developed from these kind of archives? So what kind of narratives can be told about IIT Madras? Probably even beyond the narratives that we are already telling at the Heritage Center, right? So IIT Madras was established as the third IIT after Kharagpur and Bombay, which was supported by the Soviet Union, and it was established in, as we said already, 1959. The offer was made from the German government to the Indian government, more specifically from Konrad Adenauer, the first Chancellor of Germany. Here we have in the middle the first President, Theodor Heuss, who actually came to IIT Madras himself. A very strong political presence of, I think none of the German universities have seen so many presidents visiting them. And Nehru here in 1956. Then very quickly, they moved on, and this is the so-called Ruka mission. So this is actually from the German archives already. This is, I think, from the consulate archive, which collected newspaper clippings. So August Ruka, who was a professor of architecture from the Technical University of Munich, came over here with the team. At that point, at least for the Germans, it wasn't clear what we set up in Madras, but they also did come to Madras. So they came from many places to study this and to make a plan how the IIT should be set up. Right? Finally, the decision was made to place IIT in Madras and to have Germany supporting what was called then the Southern Technical Institute. The first agreement was signed in 1958, and the first German professors, but not only professors, but also technicians, a lot of workshop people arrived in 1959, and the inauguration that happened on 31st July 1959, as we already said, but the campus wasn't there yet. So this is also what I found in the archives, very interesting. And the Hindu actually called for proposals for architects for IIT Madras. This is what's supposed to be built, kind of rather short text, and this was actually sent out in May 1959. And then the construction started at least in 1961. This is also a photo from the workshop, January 1961, when the campus was under construction, and there was at the Central Leather Research Institute, that was one of the premises at least that was used, where teaching was going on before. The German coordinator, Thomas Tau, has been doing a lot of work on that. Professor Kraus, I learned more from him about Professor Kraus than I could tell him. Robert Adolf Kraus, who was from the University of Braunschweig, but also had been many years in China, very interesting, and had been in Kharagpur, who was the coordinator, was there actually directly employed by the Foreign Office, directly put there by the Foreign Office. And then we had a contingent of about 20 German experts. They were also a little bit slow of sending people, but it was better. It was supposed to be 20 German experts, faculty and technicians, for setting up workshops and teaching labs, and also involved in teaching, starting teaching. And the buildings and the land came from the Indian side, and the infrastructure also came from the Indian side. So if we have these buildings were not set up by the Germans, but were set up by the Indian side, that was already a kind of area of conflict, right? Like, because the way how these buildings were set up weren't always to the satisfaction, to say it a little bit mildly of the German faculty, right? Because there was a lot of problems. You brought some precision instruments over there, and so that's also a very interesting story you can read in the archive. Yeah, and then obviously there was Indian faculty, there was German faculty and Indian faculty. There were a lot of German presidents. We have pictures from Theodor Heuss as well. I don't have to show that again. You can see them in the Heritage Center. This is the Heritage Center as well. Heinrich Lübke, who came then in 1962 and 1963. Another German president, at that point not German president, he became German president later, Walter Scheel. This kind of very ritual coconut water drinking when he came over, when he was the Federal Minister of Economic Cooperation. At that point, the Ministry of Economic Cooperation has taken over from the Foreign Office in the organization. And one other part is, I have not been to the archives of the DAAD, of the German Academic Exchange Service. At the same time, there was a contingent of about 100 scholarships to send technicians, not only faculty, but also technicians to train, because obviously the Germans were setting up archives, were setting up workshops, and I'm setting up archives as well, but were setting up workshops and were setting up labs, and they wanted their Indian counterpart to take over. So we had these kind of training scholarships, and this is a meeting where you see the DAADs already involved, the German Academic Exchange Service, in this. Now we come to the workshops. A gorgeous photo with Walter Scheel, the son of a wheelwright, I learned. So actually somebody who worked, a kind of carpenter who worked to make wagon wheels, right? And he definitely enjoyed himself in the workshop. And this is also how the Germans were, remember, very hands-on, not shy of taking the tools and working. And this is also what the Germans established here. And again, another of the photos we saw from the photo, I think from the same photographer. The filing, remembered, and not always liked by students. Very, very heavy workshop component. We can say something about that as well. How the Germans thought Indian engineers should be trained, which was not always to the liking of the Indians, one has to say. There was a conflict there as well. But I think it's very interesting to see that, right? Like, obviously you take people from Germany or you take people from India, different kind of ideas how engineers should be trained. So very much focused on workshop. There was actually a crisis of the whole thing. 1964, the first agreement, 58 being signed, was running out. But IIT Madras was falling behind. But this was a Cold War, this was competition, this was Germany. And Germany obviously could not admit we cannot do technical education. We have to be better than both the Soviets, or the Russians, as they would always be called, better than the Soviets, and also better than the Americans. Because part of that was also kind of, they always compared themselves as we are doing right now, like Nagaraja, right? Like saying we are better than the others, right? Like as they were trying to do that as well, like that. They said, okay, look, we really have to ramp up our engagement. There was a new agreement only in 1966. After they made a quite clear study, they reorganized it. They brought in a mentorate with 4 German technical universities: Brunswick, Aachen, Berlin, and Stuttgart, which had meetings. They wrote a lot of reports, and they were setting up also research labs. This is really the time when it's got much more into research, and also finally the Germans understood we have to not only do kind of hands-on engineering education but research, and one is the electron microscopy lab with Mrs. Nilamani. That is Mrs. Nilamani, who's sitting there. The Siemens Endoscope, very iconic of the first generation of electron microscopes, but also very interesting, was actually also set up by a lady, scientist who came here, Mrs. Butenut, who had a lot of problems setting up this kind of electron microscope, right? Like, because a lot of the friction was also not only with the Indian but also with the German side. It was basically mainly politically motivated, right, and not scientifically motivated. Sending over this instrument and not caring at all whether it would work in the tropical climate, right? Like air conditioning, bringing vibration that was way over the limit. Kind of setting up cooling water on the rooftop, finding out that it comes out with 40 degrees, right? Like things like that. So, but it worked. I mean, this is kind of new effort, 40 experts instead of 20. The Madras Committee already said Hans Habermann, who was ruling that, and as opposed to Krauss, Habermann seems to be more forgotten, but it's also very interesting because as much as Krauss, he was also in India before. He was a professor at the Indian Institute of Science between, I think, 49 and 57 in combustion engine, and he was then a professor for International Technical Cooperation. And then there was the second agreement was until 71, and then 71 to 74 we had the third agreement, kind of consolidation of the efforts. And in 1974 the labs were given over to the Indian counterpart. And after that we went into cooperation. I'm not going to talk much about that. So there were further agreements, but it wasn't kind of the labs weren't run by the Germans anymore. And one of the last things that happened, and probably the most important, was the computer center with the IBM 370, a very modern computer at that point, that was inaugurated in 1973. But then, as I said, the collaboration was going on, and then we have another German president coming here, Richard von Weizsäcker, visiting in 1991 for the inauguration of the new computer center. And obviously it didn't stop there. This is where I smuggled myself in. You can see somewhere on the picture, and very recently Frank-Walter Steinmeier and several of us actually were there during, it was not an official visit on the campus, but in the research park in 2018. So where do we find, and obviously we know also that the collaboration or cooperations are very ongoing with the Indo-German Center. There's a lot of Indian colleagues who go to Germany. There's a lot of Germans coming here. There's a lot of exchange students. So when I went to Germany, where do you find material on IIT Madras? One of the archives is the archives of the Foreign Office, which I already mentioned, right? Which is in Berlin. Great place. And you find, this is a folder, right? Technische Lehranstalt. This also means it's actually not planned as a higher institute, but more like a practical education. You will see Technische Lehranstalt in here. 1956. And the very interesting thing is you find documents, unfortunately you can't read this here, but this is actually April 1956. This is before Nehru meets Adenauer, because obviously it's not Adenauer's idea to give an IIT to India. There is an apparatus working. This is Bundesministerium für Verkehr, Bundesministerium für Wirtschaft. So for like commerce and traffic, so in the ministries are working on before that, what kind of offer will we make to India? And they will also say here, this is not only about politische Interesse. It's not only about business and stuff, but also we actually have a political interest in being present in India. So kind of very interesting document. There is a lot of other documents. They're the oldest documents you really find in this archive, because I said you always have to find the trail who has been organizing this kind of thing. So there's a lot of documents from from the German consulate here, right? Because this was planned through the German consulate. If you were looking, who was kind of administrating this here from the German side on the ground, the German consulate was very, very much involved. They received all the specialists here, right? And also, I have to say, the specialists didn't receive academic freedom like in Germany, because it was a very political project. One of the things I found was very, very interesting. One of the German professors created a questionnaire because he wanted to know what are the Indians thinking about the Germans and the German. And that was apparently a very dangerous thing, and he had to be stopped. And he was stopped, right? He was stopped. We are laughing right now. That was kind of a very serious thing. You're not supposed to do this because that can create conflict. There were kind of other issues of conflicts you find there, right? And a lot of that was really dealt through the consulate. Also, to see that. Now Mike will say he'll go to the archive and tell them, don't show him this document anymore. Then we have the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation, Bundesministerium für wirtschaftliche Zusammenarbeit, we saw here there, and especially after '66, they have a huge thing. So they have, this is another folder, this is what I found, this is in Koblenz, this is not in Berlin anymore. And they have like a folder, this is Labor Schwingungslehre. Obviously all these 95 to 99% of the documents are in German because these are German archives. And they have a kind of very systematically a folder on every lab, how it's set up, and who's the professor there. They find new faculty, and they have a category where they find new faculty, which is Tropentauglichkeit, fit for the tropics, right? Whether these people should be working well. I mean, there's the other example of Indians coming to Europe and wonder whether they can sustain cold climate, right? We have that discussion, and here we actually have the discussion. Will they get along both kind of from the tropical climate, but also socially, whether they're kind of stable enough to do this, right? Like, are they kind of in stable family situations? They very often came with their wives, with their children. And then I mean, there's a lot of stories. I mean, people had affairs here, people died here, people killed people in motor accidents, stuff, right? Like, there's a lot of very interesting stories here. And sometimes I'm really surprised how much they left in the archive. I thought they would have taken out a lot of things in the archive, but you can read about a lot of these things. Then another archive, and this is where it comes closer to us, Technical University of Berlin University Archive. This is what we need, so you can learn a lot about IIT Madras in the Technical University of Berlin archive. So not only about the Technical University of Berlin. For example, you would have a list of Indian students at the Technical University of Berlin. This is a report from a guest professor. Wrote long reports. He came to IIT Madras, got a scholarship, wrote long reports, what's going on. Exchange between Madras and Germany. This is 72, 69 to 72, kind of making plans. This is a new agreement, 1966, the second agreement. So you find all these agreements, the German version, and a lot of these reports. This is Hans Habermann writing, I think these are like hundreds of pages reports coming here, studying the situation of technical education in India from a German perspective. And RWTH Aachen, Technical University of Aachen, I went also there to the university archives. There are more archives here, I will not mention them at all, I will only come to one. This is Hans Habermann. I didn't know about Hans Habermann before when I went through. This is his CV when he was employed, that he had actually this connection to IIT, Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, right? So, kind of a very interesting story to kind of get the bigger picture how this was actually planned and organized from Germany. Then we have one of the German professors, Werner Koch, which I find very interesting also because I'm a historian of physics. I have been looking into how they organize the physics teaching here because actually I studied this in Germany before. So you have to know that Werner Koch was a student of Robert Bohr, who was a very famous German solid-state physicist before it was called solid-state physics in Göttingen, and he was very famous for his teaching and his kind of rotating tables and shadow projections. So when I went there, I wanted to know a bit more about it. You go to the University Archive of Göttingen. This is why these archives are important, not only for your own history, but also for others. Because he did his PhD in 1929 at the University of Göttingen, won Nobel laureate on his exam committee, right? Max Born, Koran, mathematician, very famous as well. This is like his PhD, and he studied with Pohl, and then you come to IIT Madras. I think unfortunately these are thrown already. These are the Pohl tables. So he tried to do teaching in the same kind of tradition of Robert Bohl. And we see this also here. This is Gustav Beuermann, now retired professor in Göttingen, sitting on the rotating table. Here we have Professor Vidayan with the rotating table and the kind of equipment that the Germans brought over here to try to teach physics, right? And to teach physics also in a very applied, in a kind of very hands-on way, which was really the way how Robert Bohl planned physics teaching, right? So you have this kind of transfer of practices from Germany to India, or at least the attempt of transfer, right? So now I want to come, I just gave you some examples of the kind of documents. There are, already I took like thousands of photographs of documents. These are very large archive holdings on IIT Madras, and partly it's a result of this was being a kind of very administrated by the central government. So there's a lot of material in the university archives, but there's also a lot of material in the government archives. So you see, I explicitly said historical perspectives from the German archives beyond institutional history, because obviously we can write very kind of meticulous institutional history. But I'm saying, I'm also arguing for this goes beyond institutional history. You can learn much more about that. One of the perspectives which became very, very heavily, I wasn't really that much interested in writing political history, but it really came out. If I asked myself, why did the Germans do that? Why did they establish IIT Madras? Why did they help? Yes, they wanted to help India, but it's very clear from the first document it's political. 1956, the Soviet Union supports IIT Bombay. The whole meeting, if you read through the meeting between Nehru and Adenauer at that point, it's all about the so-called German question, German partition, right? You have partition in India, you have partition in Germany, or what is the Indian position as a non-alignment country on German partition, right? And we have to have a presence. Obviously not a military presence, but this is kind of fighting the Cold War in other means, right? At that point, it was a little bit like, I always tell my students, a little bit like India, China and Taiwan right now. Taiwan not supposed to be a legal representative of China. They have the so-called Hallstein Doctrine. We are the only legal representatives of the German state, right? And there was actually an East German office here in Madras, but officially India did accept the East German state and got help from West Germany, right? So there's a lot of politics in development aid. So it's a very political project, which was also part of the problem, right? A lot of the problems, because the scientists had to struggle with kind of a German counterpart that wasn't even interested in scientific goals, right? They were interested in political goals, which was a problem when they needed support, right? The problems of technology transfer. The Germans really thought, and that was really kind of the, you can say the paradigm of that time was really technology transfer. We take things like there are in Germany, we bring them to India, and they're just going to work the same way. And they're very frustrated that they didn't, right? And I already talked about the examples with the labs, but also with teaching. They didn't really, there was a critique, and I think I'll just come to the next point, because it's connected. How to train the Indian engineer and the question of practice. I mean, we know already that kind of emphasis that the Germans had on workshop. And that was right there, right from the beginning. Already when the offer was made, it was very clear from the Indian side that they wanted to have an MIT-like institution. The Germans said, no, what you need is more like an engineering college. And they tried to push the Indians always into that direction. They didn't get anywhere, right? But they tried to push them always in that direction. And there's even the kind of, if you read through the documents, that they say, look, we have to re-educate the Indians, right? It's kind of a very colonial, I have to say, really approach as well, that they say, look, we have no one to do technical education, but it was very much, and I mean, it goes also to, I'm not going to go into the aspects of that, I mean, how much the Germans thought, and I already had the picture with Scheel and with the archive, that they thought that was at least part of there were several critiques of practice, the whole question of practice was quite broad, but also that they wanted the Indians to work with their hands. And they thought these guys are not good at working with their hands. Obviously, there were a lot of people who were very good at working with their hands in India, but they were not recruited into IIT, right? So that was kind of part of this, the struggle, and also what they did instead was kind of recreating a German workshop, right? Which is kind of very different from an Indian workshop, again. But they kind of recreated the German workshop, and also this kind of very heavy, so the first year, half a year the students spent in the workshop, that was also scrapped very soon after the Germans left, right? And the Indians also had different kind of ambition here, right? I think all in all, what we can really do at IIT Madras, because there is kind of some master narratives about the Indian engineer. Abhijit, his father sits here, your son has been writing a very, very good book about the Indian engineer. And obviously there are different kind of perspectives, and usually the kind of idea of the Indian engineer is kind of the British colonial engineer, right? As a tradition of Indian engineering tradition, and obviously MIT and Silicon Valley. And how we can have actually, not that these pictures are wrong, obviously they're very important, but to get a much broader idea of what engineering in India is and where traditions came from and these kind of things. So to get beyond that, I just want to get now to two problems more that I have. When I look at the German archives, I really have to say you get a very German perspective. And the more you read the German archives, the more it becomes a German story and the less it becomes an Indian story, right? So that's actually really the thing. And we have this kind of problem, and this is really why we need archives in India. You cannot just say we write. I mean, the typical issue for historians of science in India is from the colonial period. You go to the archives of the East India Company and you write Indian history from British archives. And as you see already here, you can see what the problem is, because you get the very one-sided story from a certain perspective, right? And obviously the kind of questions we have to ask ourselves, right, is not only having archives, but why the heck is it so much easier to work in German archives than in Indian archives, right? Like German archives, if you're lucky, they even give you a scholarship, you write to them, they send you information and stuff. But we really have to do something about archives, not only at IIT Madras, but in generally for history writing in India. And with that, I would like to close my talk, and thank you for your attention. You have questions? I guess we can have some questions. We have time for some questions. Any comments? I also very much critical, right? I very much like critical comments, and I like to learn something that I don't know before. Yes?
Around that time,
Yes?
MIT was started in Crawford, based along the MIT of USA. Could you compare the growth of these two institutions?
MIT in the USA.
No, MIT in Chennai.
Yeah.
It was originally a private enterprise.
I would have to give the question to somebody else who knows more about that.
My suggestion is for you to look into that aspect as well.
Yeah. Okay, yes, obviously, and I haven't done that much about it, and there are people who are much more knowledgeable about, to look into a broader history and a broader landscape of technical education in India and also locally in Madras. I think that is a very valued comment.
Because there, just to support what the gentleman said, like you probably know already that the Guindy Engineering College across the road
Yes.
has a very long history.
Yes, I know that. Yeah, obviously there's Guindy Engineering College, and we can also ask ourselves, why are we so separated from them, right? Obviously there's some structural issues. I think there's also an issue that the IITs, while the IITs have been very well supported, that other institutions didn't receive equivalent support. And what we would also say in Germany, if you look at the German landscape of technical education, and one of my colleagues has written about that very nicely, that a lot of the elite engineering schools got a lot of credit for India, for German very rapid industrialization, especially around 1900. But the success was actually that you had a very good educational system all through, from vocational training all the way to technical universities, right? And while we have supported IIT very much, and it's a very good institution, what about other educational institutions, whether they have been supported the same way? I think that would be an interesting question that has been risen by other people, similar to the universities, right? Like if you look at Madras University.
I can tell you something about this, because I was in the Ginty Engineering College, Christ graduated from there. I moved out to MIT, it was being referred to.
Yes, yes.
From 1956 to 61.
Yes.
Then I moved out to IIT Madras.
Yes.
So I can tell you something about this. The Ginty Engineering College is very different from IIT structure.
Yeah.
Because that is controlled by the state government.
Yes.
So that makes all the difference. As far as MIT is concerned, it was the first institute to start new courses like instrument technology, electronics, aeronautical engineering. It was not there in many other colleges, etc. It was unique.
Yeah.
Though they had started the idea of imitating MIT in the US, they did not have the finances for that.
Yes.
And therefore later on the government took over the institute. As far as IIT is concerned, of course, it came with a different philosophy and the collaboration. And I'll meet you later on to tell you a lot of things, inputs for your archive on, you are talking about politics, there was a lot of that in this. But in spite of that, IIT Madras made a mark because it was known for its practical orientation.
Yes, yes.
The only institute which had workshops attached
Yes.
to the laboratory, and we had to do it with our own hands. We had to
Yes,
train
yes,
for that.
yes, yes.
So there are a lot of uniqueness in IIT Madras,
Yes.
and we aimed very high,
Yes.
and we were able to reach there.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I mean, you're totally right. I mean, that I know, as I said, there are many people here who know a lot of aspects of the history that I haven't really studied.
Incidentally, I was in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences in IIT Madras
Yeah.
for more than 12 years.
Yes, yes, I have your card, and I think we should be coming back. And I would be very happy if, especially if somebody has written about this, about these issues. I would very much like to learn about this. Yeah.
Good presentation. The Germans also given the latest computer 360 quite early itself in India. So 1976.
Sorry?
They also given the latest computer 360.
Yes, yes.
360. So the thought seems to come as simple of question of practice gone to the latest technology. What do you view on that? So simple practice, they really gone the real very good latest system to us actually. We have very few institutions in India who have such a computing power. So the thought seems to have changed from German thought. What will be the latest like MIT top great computing facilities. So I think of that.
That the changed?
Yeah, but they give the latest system to us quite early, 1976, so got IBM 360.
Yeah,
There are only few institutions in India have that system.
Yes, yes. I mean, at that point, there is, I mean, if you look into the computing histories, I actually had a student who looked into that. That was very interesting. Is, I mean, why it was the most advanced computer in India at that time had, among other things, to do in Kanpur, actually, the relationship with the Americans retracted, right? And also IBM actually removed itself, like was kicked out from the Indian market, and a lot to do with politics also. I think really there was a situation between Nixon and Indira Gandhi, while the Germans brought this machine. Actually, if you look through the documents, a lot of the German engineers, they're kind of more old school, you can say old-fashioned, and they're more hesitant, but then they really want to make a mark. They really look at IIT Bombay, they really look at IIT Kanpur, and they see they have to make an investment. They also discussed for quite a while whether they should get a German computer. I mean, there are some computer manufacturers around, but they see that this is going to be a failure. They have to bring an IBM machine, they have to bring an American machine, and that's what they're doing, right? But they're also trying to come with the German machine at that point. But then they made the investment, and as I said, I think in '66 a lot of things really changed. That also the Germans understood this is what you call in America a research university. You have to set up research labs, and it's not only about sending your students to the workshop and finding and these things, right? As much as admire that as well, as you said, when it was known for the quality of the productions.
How much impact created by the German engineering approach in Indian industry?
Sorry?
How much impact created by the German engineering approach in Indian industry after IIT?
That's a good question, and I would really love you to answer that, because what is the legacy of that? What was the impact on that, right? I would really like to know. And I mean, you probably here are much better to answer that, right? I think one of the things that really I found very interesting, especially like kind of looking at collaboration as a political project, because there was a lot of German companies being active in Germany at that time, right? There was the Luckeler steel plant, Siemens, Mercedes. There were a lot of companies being active, but there was very little connection to IIT Madras. And I was actually surprised by how little connection it was. But I don't know, I would love to be proven wrong, and if any of the people in the audience would say something about that. I think it's kind of very difficult to, but I mean, what I see here is when I came to IIT Madras, I was surprised how many people still have this kind of very strong connections to Germany, right? There's still among our faculty, there's so many people who even speak German, even the younger generation did their PhD in Germany, and obviously this is kind of a collaboration that has been maintained, right? And we see German industry being very active in India as well. But obviously a lot of faculty, and even talk to faculty, they try to give them scholarships to go to Germany, but they much rather wanted to go to the US for very good reasons also, right? Because that was really the new, that's where things were happening, right? You might say engineering was kind of, and a lot of Indians also went, there's a long history of that, went to Germany to study, right? There is the book, The Technological India by Ross Bassett, very interesting, the links between India and MIT and students who went to MIT. And the US became increasingly more interesting, right? And then really that took over, and that was even true for Germany, right? Like Germany wasn't the center anymore for science and engineering at that point. The US, especially on that level, right? Like for vocational training still, I mean the US, not really well known for vocational training, to say very mild, right? For vocational training, maybe Germany is still very strong, and they've been very active in Germany to set up centers for vocational training. But engineering and science and engineering, obviously, the US became state of the art.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
You know, my first fundamental question: what is the difference between an archive and a library? Number one.
Yeah.
Second question is that okay, whatever we are recording in terms of how, what, when, who.
Yes.
Now the question is that when we talk about archives, are we also going to explore, or is it intention to find out the why of it?
Sorry, why?
Why? Means why did this happen?
Yes, obviously, that's what I say. This is what history is about. There's causality. I always tell my engineers, there's causality in science, there's causality in history. So if you are not asking the why question, so the questions you have to ask: who, when, how, why. There is causality in history. Obviously, causality in history is not like in engineering, it's not strict causality. But if we are not asking the why question, like history is like dynamics, right? You have a system and you have push and pull. And if you don't ask for that, that's one of the things that's your obligation as a historian, to really ask, why did things happen? Why did things not happen, right? Obviously, if there were ambitions, there's a lot of ambitions behind IIT Madras. Some of them were not fulfilled, right? We all know it, right? Kind of self-sustaining India with engineers and stuff. That was kind of not really happening the way it was planned, right? Like within the Peruvian program. So we can ask, why did things happen? Why did things not happen? Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Talking about, as you might say, the forces in history, right? Like if you're an engineer. So what are the forces in history? Okay.
So that's the finish. Just that means that the difference between an archive and a library would be an archive is one, which also focuses substantially on the why.
No, the archive itself not. The archive is a repository. I mean, if you have kind of classical modernist archiving, you say, as an archive, you have to be neutral. That's also why I'm saying it's very dangerous a little bit for me. I only want to be I can't be the archivist of IIT Madras and at the same time write history. Because then I would probably form the archive more to my interest as a historian. That's not a very good practice, actually. So you would say usually the role of the archivist and the role of the historian should actually be separated. There is a conflict of interest. I can just tell you, there is a conflict of interest here. The difference between an archive and a library, a lot of libraries have archives and a lot of archives have libraries. So usually the division, when I worked at the Norwegian State Archive, that was my own experience as an archivist, we would say everything that is published, that is officially published, has no place in an archive. And everything that is not a published document has a place in the library apart from the special collections. So in a lot of countries, and we've been discussing about this as well, where should we locate the archive, right? Should the archive be part of the library? Because in a lot of European countries, especially in the UK, you will find that a lot of the archives are actually located within the library. Because the library already has certain infrastructure. There are reading rooms, they have conservation, if they have old books and stuff, right? So there's a lot of reasons why you could have archives within the library structure. You have a library catalog which you can use, right? You can share resources. But usually the difference is really that in the library you traditionally would keep published works. And in the archives, like the first thing is, for example, we had this a lot, like when I was working in Norway, when I was working in archives, we would take over the papers of a professor, of a deceased professor, right? Like we got all these things, right? The things we would not take into the archive would be his books and his papers. We would take the correspondence, we would take the meeting protocols, everything that you don't find in the library. Because in the library it's published, right? So that is, but I would say, I mean, like always, if you come to the boundary of both, it's becoming murky, right? You'll find out that sometimes you still find books here and you still find other documents there.
Maybe just one more question since we're running out of time. Thank you.
I just want to say that your archive is a very focused study in a particular institution or a corporate. It is not like a library. A library is a wide possibility of knowledge. There is no comparison. What you say is you don't have archives in India, probably many institutions don't have archives. In other words, they don't have the history of their own growth. That's what we are talking about here. We will record the history of that. Just another thought to extend that. The gentleman was asking about industry and German connection and how it's affected. I have some information in the German Chamber of Commerce who run MBA courses for students and who have typically dual training programs, unlike other MBA students who have only theory. They have industrial training as well as theoretical framework, and they go into German companies. Maybe that would be a good source to really know what the impact of German sort of technological training or running industrial training.
I mean, obviously, just to quickly, very quickly, and then I give in about the archives. Yes, obviously, a lot of the institutions, specifically the institutions that have been set up during the colonial times, they have archives. But a lot of these archives are not very easily accessible, right? They're not very, as you would say, user-friendly. If you, I mean, really, it's like day and night. If anybody has ever tried to work, for example, go to the Library of Congress and try to work with them, or the British Library, right? It's a very nice working atmosphere. And make it very easy, right? But then also you can say, yes, this is also how you can say Britain still kind of maintains its power over the narrative, right? Like a lot of Indian history, but there's kind of a lot more, right? That is written at Oxford and Cambridge, right? But we don't have to get into that discussion too much right now. Because yes, we have many institutions who have archives, but they're not very well maintained or easily accessible. And specifically, among the institutions that came up after 1945, usually they have not created an archive. While they have created all other kind of structures, they have not created archives. Including even TFR, it's a very new thing that they have now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Roland. May I now request Professor Nagarajan to please present Professor Roland with a token of appreciation. In 1962, German President UK visited a number of cities in India, including Madras or Chennai. A 20-minute video in German was made then on the President's visit. This video has been made available to the public from the German archives. We shall now watch an excerpt from this video that shows President UK at IIT. In the video, he lays the foundation stone of IIT Madras at a brand new open-air theatre. This may be the first color video to be made in IIT. It is certainly the earliest video we are aware of that shows IIT Madras.
Unweit der ehrwürdigen Hindu-Tempel lernt und arbeitet die Jugend des Landes. Die Studenten der Technischen Lehranstalt von Madras sind an diesem Nachmittag zusammengekommen, um den deutschen Bundespräsidenten zu begrüßen. Es war der besondere Wunsch Dr. Lübkes, dieser Lehranstalt, ihren Dozenten und Schülern einen Besuch abzustatten. Denn in der wissenschaftlichen und finanziellen Unterstützung einer Ausbildungsstätte dieser Art liegt das Wesen sinnvoller Entwicklungshilfe. Als Symbol der Partnerschaft zwischen beiden Nationen setzte der Bundespräsident zum Abschluss der festlichen Zusammenkunft einen Gedenkstein. Die Technische Lehranstalt von Madras ist eine der 4 technischen Hochschulen, die von der indischen Regierung eingerichtet worden sind. Sie dienen der Ausbildung von Ingenieuren für die wachsende Industrialisierung des Landes. Wenn die Anlagen und Laboratorien erst einmal vollständig fertiggestellt sind, sollen hier mehr als 1000 Studenten ihr 5-jähriges Studium absolvieren können, unterrichtet von indischen und deutschen Lehrern, um dann als Diplom-Ingenieure leitende Aufgaben zu übernehmen. Indiens Bedarf an hochqualifiziertem technischem Nachwuchs ist groß.
Professor Tarun Chandradula's group at IIT Madras, through a data sharing agreement with CT-BTO, has begun constructing an engineering system to track whale sounds in the central Indian Ocean. The system uses an interdisciplinary approach to track whales across seasons and years. Today, he will present preliminary findings before us. May I now request Professor Tarun Chandradula to deliver his talk, Building a Whale Atlas for the Indian Ocean.
Waiting for staying this late, So, I'm Tarun. I teach in the Ocean Engineering department. I come from a background of acoustic propagation modeling and signal processing. I really love to work with acoustic sounds that have been recorded in the ocean, either by careful calibrated experiments or by hydrophones just sitting there and listening to sounds. I came to know about this opportunity to record and to process sounds from the Indian Ocean via the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, or the CTBTO. The CTBTO comes under the UN and therefore nuclear non-proliferation. And they're always watching out if any countries are testing nuclear weapons. And for this, they have a wide network of seismic stations. They have a network of infrasound stations, and they also have a network of radionuclide stations. And under the ocean, they have hydrophones sitting, and they're constantly recording low frequency sound and just waiting to hear if somebody has exploded a nuclear weapon under the ocean. And so they want to avoid that. So they're trying to enforce this by first monitoring this. India, we have not signed the treaty, so we normally don't get the data that they record. They normally give it out to countries that have signed the treaty, but they do make some exceptions if they think we have some interesting science questions that we have to tackle, and we have to write to them, write a small proposal, and thankfully it got approved, and they provided this data from the stations. Okay? So about hydrophone stations, they have a few more than what is shown in the map, but I'll focus only on the Indian Ocean hydrophone stations. So you see on the top there is India, you see Australia, Africa, and then there is Antarctica. And in the middle you see 3 red stars. Okay? The northernmost one is approximately in the central Indian Ocean. That is a hydrophone station of the Diego Garcia Islands. And go to Australia, the south there is a hydrophone station of Cape Leeuwin. And 45 degree south, somewhat higher up from Antarctica, you have the Crozet Island listening station. These are there just sitting and listening. They're constantly recording without a break. Of course, I mean, it's engineering, so things do fail and all that. So they do have data outages. stations have to be recertified and all that. But other than that, they're recording hydrophone sounds between, let us say, from 1/10 of a hertz to 100 hertz, or just a little over 100 hertz, say, let's say 105 hertz. That's the frequency ranges that they constantly record. So now you may think, right, to monitor the whole of Indian Ocean, right, if they're out there looking for nuclear explosions, right, how can we, how is it enough? Okay, so for that, the answer for that is the deep ocean, right, has this acoustic waveguide like property. To my rightmost, I have an approximate sound speed profile that is usually found in the ocean. There is oceanographic phenomenon, there are temperature gradients, there is salinity effects coming in, there are pressure effects going there, right? So all that create a sound speed profile. What that means is sound speed is not constant across depth, but rather it changes much as a function of depth. And when that changes, right, what that does is it really refracts sound. And if you do the map, you do Snell's law for the deep ocean sound speed profile, you can actually show that there will actually be an acoustic waveguide being created in the deep ocean where you transmit something and it gets trapped in the deep ocean. It will undergo cylindrical spreading, but that's it. It will just keep traveling to thousands of kilometers. So the sound does travel across the world's ocean. Okay. So that is there. Okay. And that's the kind of property that the CTBTO is trying to exploit. For us, it is trying to listen to the whales. I'll start talking to the whales, but that's what we are after. But then, apart from, right, say the nuclear explosion or the whale sound that we're trying to listen, there's also, because it's transparent to sound, right, there's a lot of other noise sources which do come in, and it's very, very noisy inside the ocean. In just a little while, I'll play some sounds that we do record. And okay, so what are the other sounds that get picked up by the CTBTO hydrophone, right? So I'll be showing most of the talk will be plots like this. So for that, let me explain what the figures are basically. So on the right side, right, I have these line plots in blue, and those are this time series. So you put a hydrophone, which is you're just listening for sound. In x-axis is time, y-axis is the pressure in dB, underwater sound levels in dB. So I have there whale sound. Typically, just one of the sounds that we recorded, whale, and then there is also the earthquake sound that is there, and then there is also some other anthropogenic sound. Just a minute, I'll tell you what the sound is, and that is what is being recorded. Now we can do some processing on it. So you take those sounds, okay, and you split it up into chunks. Okay, so you split it up into time intervals, okay, and do a Fourier transform of it, which is basically trying to see what are the frequencies that are there and what are the amplitudes across frequency, right? So for every time block, you will get something across frequency. Okay, so you line up those time blocks, what the frequency information is, and you get a 2D plot like this. So x-axis is time and y-axis is all frequency. So you see anything in dark shade of black, right? So that means that there is some significant energy coming in at that time in x and at that frequency in y. Okay. So what you see there, right, on the topmost is the whale spectrogram. So you see that it goes off in bouts. Okay. So whale call. This is a whale call by the Madagascan type whale, and that goes about in bouts. And you see that it has a very localized nature to it in frequency. So that's somewhere between I think 20 to 50 hertz is what it is. And then in the middle you hear an earthquake being picked up. So the land that has some seismic motion, and some of that gets coupled into the acoustic wave, right? And you see that the earthquake also has a signature, and that's very localized to the lowest frequency. So you can also hear earthquakes. Okay? And at the bottom here, you see all these noisy spikes coming, and they're very loud, and they spread over a wide frequency band. Okay? And those are due to seismic surveys. They have these air guns that go on at specific rates, and they're like impulse, tack, 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 tack. ears, and you see that covering all the different frequencies. Okay, so these are, apart from whales, okay, so these are what we pick up. Okay. So because we have this opportunity, I thought, why don't we trace the whale population in the Indian Ocean region. Okay. So then I went about trying to find out how much do we actually know about what types of whales are there in the Indian Ocean. Okay. We know a lot about the whale populations in the Pacific. We know a lot about them in the Arctic. But when it comes to the Central Indian Ocean, there isn't a lot of published information. Okay. There's some here, some there, and all that. So I was trying to, before I found out all the right places that there could be, I was trying to look it up, and then I come across this book called Marine Mammals of India, of the Indian Ocean. And then I tried to look up the author, and it says Kumran Sadasivam. And so I end up I find out his number and I give him a call, and I say, can I come see you? I want to talk about this. I don't know anything about it. So why don't you come to the Heritage Center? That's where I am. So even before I didn't know that there was a person at IIT Madras who had written something about whales. And so anyway, that's just, I thought, an interesting story for me. So then we started looking more into the journals and all that. This is what I found. We know the approximate locations. Okay, so there is the Antarctic blue whale, which is about 30 meters in length, and that is called the true blue whale. So if anybody says blue whale, so that's a true blue whale. That's like up to 30 meters in length. Okay, and then there is also the fin whale. Now the fin whale is about 20 to 25 meters in length. Okay, and that's found more closer to Antarctica and a little higher up. And then there are all these local variants of the blue whale. While the true blue whale is 30 meters in length, there are all the pygmy varieties of the blue whale that are about 20 meters in length. Okay, so that is so there are all these baleen whales, as they call it, and all of them use low frequency sound to look for mates, to forage for food, and our hydrophones do end up picking up these sounds. So that's opportunity for us. So what we wanted to say is, rather than all this data, a lot of it is from old whaling records, okay, which are from early 1900s and later on. And then of late there have been some acoustic efforts that have been taking place. Very few in the Indian Ocean. So we wanted to analyze this and see, can we get some migration patterns? Where are they at different times? Okay. So that's what led to the term whale atlas, as I like to call it. These species, the Antarctic blue whale is endangered. They say the species count is increasing. Fin whale again is endangered, and the other pygmy varieties of the blue whale, right? Their conservation status is unknown. We don't know how many numbers are there. Yeah, those type of inputs are very, very crucial for conservation purposes. They're also crucial for as a measurement of ocean health. Okay, so those were the reasons why I think it's worthwhile to look at this. So what can we do with acoustics, right? Okay. So what is the tool, okay, that I'm going to use in this talk? We have gone further from what I'll show in this talk, but I'll show a lot of these. Okay. So again, these are the spectrograms that I mentioned to you a couple of slides back. X-axis is time and y-axis is the frequency information in it, analyzed time chunk by time chunk. And just like how, right, human beings and other species, right, have different frequencies at which they talk, at which they communicate, right? Whales have this low frequency, and it's not all of them. They don't use exactly the same frequency. They use different frequency bands, and there is a certain structure to their calls which we can use to identify which species it is that we're hearing. Okay? So on the top rightmost, I have the Sri Lankan pygmy whale, and that has 3 bands. One is the 100 hertz at the top. So one is the 100 hertz at the top, and then there's something that comes in at around 60 hertz, and then there's some other noise that comes in here that's the hydrophones pick that sometimes the animals don't make that sound, but really the 100 and the 60,
There are these tonals that come in. And then there is the Madagascan pygmy whale, which has these tonals that occur between 15 to 40 hertz is what you have these bands. You have dot 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 and then dot 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 dot. So you have these coming in a different bands. And the Antarctic blue whale, the true blue whale, right, is around 25, 26 hertz, and then it has this little tail that comes in at a slightly lower frequency. And also, we found we and some other groups have this type of calls which nobody has identified yet. So it's still called as unidentified. Okay? The locations, the migration patterns of these unidentified whale, okay, are not known at all. Okay? So this is what it looks like. This the unidentified. Okay? So we have these spectrograms. Okay, so what can we do with those spectrograms? Right? One is try to locate it call by call, right, and then see what species it is. Okay. What we also did is take the whole data set. They've been recording this data since 2002. Okay. And then can we average it in 2 hour blocks, okay, and see trends, right? See when a certain frequency comes up, right, over a 15-year time period. See when another frequency comes up at another time period. Right? Because the whales use different frequency bands, we can see when certain regions in the spectrogram light up, when they go silent, right? So the first one, the first type of plot that I'll show you is a 15-year long observation. We calculate the spectrograms, average it in 2 hour blocks, and stack them up for years 2002 up to 2015 is what we have. Okay, and this is for the Central Indian Ocean Station. It had two hydrophone stations. I mean, one is in the north part of the island, one is in the south part of the island, and here is Sri Lanka, here is Maldives. What is a 15-year time cycle say? Right? Time here, x-axis is frequency. One thing, right, that we were quite surprised to notice was that the 100 hertz one, right, the frequency around 100 hertz belongs to the Sri Lankan whale as I told you. Okay? And look what happens to it over a 15-year time period, right? So see this black line keeps going down, it keeps going down, it keeps going down, it keeps going down. For some reason, right, you see this line, it's faint here, it comes up here, black, 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 it goes down. There is a decreasing trend in frequency. So for some weird reason, the animal, right, the mammal is changing its behavior, and these whales are using these calls for communicating, for foraging, and something that's so fundamental to them, and they're changing their behavior. And the same thing, for some reason, it doesn't show up so well in the plot. The Antarctic blue whale also shows this decreasing trend. So the blue whales show this decreasing trend in frequency, and people say it could be due to increasing ocean traffic. It could be due to the increase in whale population. There are so many theories out there, but really nobody knows why they are doing this. Okay, and what we also found out is not just the blue whale, also the unidentified ones. You see these streaks of black that come in, right? They seem to be going up higher. They increase, while the bigger ones go like this. The unidentified one, some variant of pygmy whale, right? It goes up like this. So for some reason they're changing the calling patterns. We don't know why. Okay? So that was one thing that we found, and another. You don't see it here. Okay. And okay, so that was one thing that we did. We observed the same kind of trends for the Antarctic blue whale and the Crozet Island in Antarctica and for the Cape Newman also. So now what I'll do is I'll show you just 1 year's worth of data. 1 year worth of data at the Crozet Island, 1 year worth of data at the Cape Newman station, going further north, and going up to the Central Indian Ocean. What can we see? Okay. So if you look at the spectrograph, okay, so from Crozet Islands that are somewhere around 45 degrees south, okay, what do we pick in 1 year, right? Is there a pattern to it, right? Do certain calls come at certain times of the year and so on. Okay. So what you see is there is this band that comes in at 25 hertz, and there is this another one that comes in from a fin wave, and it lights up between June to start of December, and then it goes really quiet, and then it picks up sometime later after sometime March or something. Same thing for the fin wave. Okay, so you see this black here, and then it goes quiet. Okay. So one reason is most probably is that we are the southern hemisphere. Okay, so our concept of summer and winter is opposite from what it is in the southern hemisphere. Okay, so December is actually summer in the southern hemisphere. So it is the austral summer. Okay, so with the austral summer, it is widely believed that the waves they probably migrate to this part where it's warmer, and that's where I think they go for food. Okay, so that's what happens. And same thing for the fin whale, and same thing for the Antarctic, and that's why we don't see them here, because they're going further south towards Antarctica. That's what is happening. And you also pick up another whale type here, which is the Madagascan pygmy whale. What happens at Cape Yuin, right? Go a little east towards Australia. What does that station show? So you have the fin whale here, this smudge of black here. Can you switch off the lights? I just want to see this more slides, that's all. Can you please switch off the light? Well, it's good on my computer. Same thing. Maybe a little better, I think. Okay, let me try. Yeah, so again, the Antarctic one, it's here, and then it's a shade lighter in black here. And then we hear these new calls, which are the Australian pygmy whales. Okay. That's what you see there. Okay. Now, if they're not heard in December, in the south, right, you go towards the central Indian Ocean. What do you find in the Diego Garcia? Okay. One thing is, the Antarctic comes out when you try to average it. Okay. They form during this season, but the other times they're not at all. Okay. So I think they're going further and further south towards the austral summer, and you don't see it when October, December, you don't see it at all. So October, December, they're probably near Crozet Island, and in December they're in Antarctica, is what I believe. Okay. And then there is the Sri Lankan wave. Okay, this is the Diego Garcia South. We are over here, right? And Sri Lankan wave, it comes up between June and August. So between June and August, it's somewhere over here that the south one picks it, but you will not see it in the north. When you go to the north, what happens is you don't. So when you go to the north, you see the unidentified one coming up here during October to February. Okay, but you don't really. But in the south, this region is totally absent, so you don't see it. So there's some kind of migration pattern going around there, around these islands, which what spectrograms are showing us. Okay, so putting together these spectrograms and what can we say so far, right? As I mentioned, right, the Antarctic wave, right, is heard very well in Crozet and in Cape Yuin. Okay, so it's between February to October. You hear it very well. Okay, and you hear some faint traces of it in Diego Garcia also. So it's probably somewhere over here, because the fin waves, right, we don't hear them at all. We hear them here and we hear them here. So I think the distance is probably a little too much for the sound to reach Diego Garcia. They're going to put it a little further south. So fin wave is where we mark more closer towards Antarctica, March to October. The Antarctic blue whale, February to October, it's around here. And there's a lot of Antarctic blue whale activity that goes on. Although it's believed to be currently endangered, but there is a lot of sounds that have been picked up, so it suggests that its numbers are increasing. Okay. And the unidentified one, I was telling you, we pick it up at certain times in the north, we pick it up at certain times in the south. We think between November to January it's probably around here, and between August to October, this one is around here. And the Sri Lankan one, between April to June, we pick it up in the north, and that's somewhere around here, so that the north side we pick it up. And between in July and later, we pick it up here, so it's doing some kind of migration somewhere around here. But again, the Sri Lankan, the unidentified one, you don't hear it in Crozet, you don't hear it in Cape Yuin. So those are Madagascar one, you hear it, you don't hear it in Australia, no. You hear it in Cape Newman, you hear it in, you hear it in Diego Garcia, you hear it in Crozet. So we're going to put the Madagascan whale location here. So that's what I have, this spectrograms and so on. And a lot of this work has been done by my MS students. I work with them, and that's what it is. We have gotten so far. We are currently working on building robust detectors that you can use to process this whole 50K data and also come up with numbers, come up with really an azimuth and an elevation fix for this wave, which was the original goal. But now, even just by looking at spectrograms, we're getting a very there's a lot of stories to tell. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, your Fourier transform gives you some specific frequencies for specific wave.
Right.
Is there a way of quantifying the number of whales in a certain region?
Yeah, so for the number of whales, we're trying to build certain detectors instead of just looking at the whole transform. This is what we're trying to do. So we know what frequency it's coming at, how long the duration is. So we're trying to build a subspace, a basis set for this consisting of different frequencies of a certain time width, and we're coming up with a sort of a template dictionary, and we project these sounds onto those templates, and wherever the amplitude is high, we say yes, we detected it. And if it's low, there's nothing in it. But we're working on this quite extensively. But the real issue there is also a lot of false alarm. You get a detection, but sometimes there's also all this anthropogenic sound, there are all these other noise sources, which can also result in a high amplitude. I mean, you saw the air gunning noise, and that covers like all the frequencies, and there's no insulation against it. So right now we are trying to balance out getting high detection rates and lowering the false alarm. So that's what it is. Yeah. We have some numbers, but in this approach that we're following, but we want to be more sure about it.
When a certain species moves away from a region, is there a cross correlation of another territory in the direction where it is moving that increases their frequency and amplitude? A is disappearing and going away.
Okay.
And this set of frequency can be picked up by another sound station. You know what I mean? Collaborating between boomers.
Right. That's what we saw with the unidentified one, right? So you see the sounds here in the north, which you think are coming from here, right? Around December to February. But you go to the south, you hear them at completely at another time. So we think the wave is here between December to February, and then later it comes up here. So in between there's an island. It blocks sound. So north can hear all of this, and south can hear all of this. So that's what it is. So yes, this is one thing that I was talking about. Yes.
There is no localization.
Yeah, not yet, but not in this talk. But also know that these hydrophones, they come in triads. So each hydrophone, each red dot comes, it has 3 hydrophones separated by 2 kilometers from each other.
So some localization information is possible.
It's possible, yes. We are working on it.
I mean, but not just at one station. Can you even localize?
Yeah, so for localization, the key is you have to be able to estimate the arrival time.
Yeah.
So there is a
multiple stations are not synchronized and all that.
No, they're synchronized. It's all high quality data. Yeah. But it could be really strong at one station if it's close by, and then it could be very faint. So getting an arrival time estimate, it's not so straightforward. Yeah. But locally, we could say a lot that we hope that we have localized it. It's in the way it went in this direction and so on, and in the south it probably went in here, so we can interpolate it.
No, whales the only species that communicate or give out the frequencies in the band of interest that you're monitoring. I mean, are there any other species that would cause confusion?
Now, biological sound, we are fairly certain that we have it all. Okay, we've been looking at sound, and biological sounds we think are this. But other than this, there are all kinds of anthropogenic sounds, ships, air gunning, all the other earthquakes. Earthquakes are not anthropogenic, but yeah. So there are all the others. But biological sounds we are fairly certain in these frequencies. But if you go higher up in frequencies, there are dolphins, there are biology, whatever, all kinds of frequencies. They go up to ultrasound. This is in the low frequencies. But one thing is you're not able to pick those high frequencies. Even if you had the hydrophones to span the whole ultrasonic frequencies, the high frequency sound would suffer a lot of volumetric absorption and you would not really record these from so far away. Yeah. Okay.
I would have very much liked to have given an introduction, purpose, what is the purpose of the study, and what is it you will get out of it. And more than that, if you had mentioned the 3 types of waves, picture of time.
Picture, yes, okay.
Okay,
Sure, yeah.
Technical talk, that's what I want.
Sure, okay, picture, yes. But the purpose I did mention that conservation, these types of inputs are very important for conservation studies. So that's, if you're interested in application, that's what it is. Yeah. I did mention.
Yes, some sounds.
Can you hear some sound? Okay. So this is Antarctic blue wave. No pictures but sounds. That's all it is. You hear it, it's it's played up in frequency. It's at 8 kilohertz. I played at 8 kilohertz and you hear it.
Mixed up with something else and both are. The frequency is not.
Just playing it at a faster rate. I'm playing it at a faster rate. So that's the Antarctic one. And
music.
air gunning. And we also get, there's also some kind of a ship vessel kind of noise in the background. There's a static. So that's that. And I'll play. There's Madagascar. So you'll hear some frequency upstream, frequency downstreams, tonals. That's how it sounds. Silent and then you hear it. So that's the word. Slightly energy being coupled in. Take us to
Once again, it's played at different frequencies.
Yes. They've all been played up to 8 kilohertz. Otherwise we not hear it. It's all around 10, 15 hertz maximum. Yeah, maximum. That's okay.
Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. Kumaran Sadashivam to present a token of appreciation to Professor Tarun. Mr. Gavishankar with his photography, often developing his picture in their house. I now request Ms. Mamta Dash to present Mrs. Mahalakshmi Gavishankar with a token of appreciation. I request Mr. Kumaran Sadashivam to give the vote of thanks.
Just how small we are is that you just need
fingers of one hand to count the number of people who run the Heritage Center. As I said, you actually need just one finger or a couple of fingers to count the number of people who run the Heritage Center. So we really appreciate any help we get, and organizing a program like this is a very ambitious project for us. So let me express my thanks to the participants, the speakers who so readily agreed to come and give the talk, and to the family of Mrs. Mahalakshmi Gauri Shankar, her children, who gave us so much information and photographs to put up the photographic exhibition that we have inaugurated today. Thanks to all the units of IIT who helped us, the engineering unit, the guest house, they gave us tea, well, at least to most of us, and to all the students who helped us. So thank you all. Thanks to all of you for having given us this support. Thank you. Good night.